Tuesday night, no sign of any strong winds. In fact, with light winds widely, we're going to see a lot of low cloud, some mist, murk, and also some patchy drizzle in places, especially across southern England as the night wears on. 4 or 5 Celsius here, a touch of frost further north, where we do have some clear spells across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, particularly eastern Scotland. I think for western Scotland, we keep the showers going through the night. And it's a damp start to the day across southern counties of England, through parts of Wales, the Midlands and East Anglia, a lot of low cloud, not much brightness. There will be some brightness, though, for the far north of England into Scotland and Northern Ireland, away from any fog patches. It's a chilly start to the day, but a bright start for many. Showers continuing in the north and west of Scotland, and these will be slow moving. Now, the brighter skies in the north will extend to a few other parts into the afternoon, especially Wales and the southwest. It will slowly brighten up with some sunshine appearing. The Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast stay grey, stay a bit drizzly into the afternoon with highs of 5 or 6 Celsius. It's going to feel a little bit colder further west and north as well, even as the brighter skies turn up. Now, those clear spells do eventually arrive across the whole of the UK on Wednesday night, and that means, of course, Thursday will start off with a frost in places, but quite quickly a band of rain moves through. That's not the storm. The storm turns up on Friday with widespread disruption.
Expect a warm front moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems on Merseyside for the M57. The motorway's down to a single lane on that 3-lane stretch from junction 2 to 1 as you head towards the M62 at Tarbock Island, and the scene of an accident involving a couple of lorries. Meanwhile, in Wiltshire, the A346 Salisbury Hill closed at Marlborough following an accident. In West Sussex, south of Petworth, the A285 stays closed on Duncton High Street following a serious accident, and there are long queues on the M27 in Hampshire heading eastbound from junction 8 to 9 towards Fareham. A lorry broke down, although all lanes have now been reopened. And staying in Hampshire, the A35 remains closed just southwest of Lyndhurst, so in the New Forest. There was an accident where a car drove into a telegraph pole, and recovery work continues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Amazing, just the best feeling ever.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs Co. Coming up tonight, the Southport murders must be a line in the sand for Britain, said Keir Starmer today in his address to the nation. You don't say. We figured that out quite some time ago. But also speaking today, the Home Secretary. So I'm asking you, did they answer the questions that I know many of you have? Did they provide reassurance to you? Nigel Farage, as a small example, has taken to calling our Prime Minister cover up Keir. Is that harsh or fair? We'll have all the latest on that. Also, it's 24 hours since the Trump inauguration, and boy, oh boy, has he hit the ground running. A massive turning point in history. Did you get much sleep last night, by the way? I didn't. I went to bed so pumped up, feeling like a new dawn has broken. We'll look at all of that. But I'll tell you something that doesn't actually seem to have changed much. That's the attacks this time on Elon Musk, with people saying that he has been performing Nazi salutes at the ceremony last night. I mean, come on, ladies and gents. Are people really not bored of this absolute nonsense by now? When will they realise that screeching far right and Nazi at anything and anyone they don't like is frankly yesterday's news? A corner has been turned, hasn't it? All of that and lots more, and alongside me tonight, my panel, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Conservative peer and former member of the European Parliament, and James Schneider, the former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live for the 6 o'clock news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines from the GB Newsroom. The Home Secretary has said public bodies completely failed to identify the terrible danger Axel Rudiker-Barner posed as she announced a public inquiry into the Southport attack. Yvette Cooper said the 18-year-old who admitted carrying a knife over 10 times before his deadly rampage should have faced stronger intervention. She also revealed his case wasn't escalated despite 3 referrals to the Prevent counter-terrorism scheme. Rudiker-Barner has pleaded guilty to murdering 3 girls at a dance class, as well as charges of attempted murder, ricin production and possession of terrorist material. Earlier, Sir Keir Starmer warned of a new growing terror threat, with lone young men now responsible for carrying out extreme acts of violence. Donald Trump has begun his first full day back in office, arriving at the Washington National Cathedral for the post-inauguration day prayer service. After his inauguration yesterday, the new president signed a range of executive orders to pull the US out of the World Health Organization and declared a national emergency at the southern border. He also pardoned nearly 1,600 people tied to the January 6th Capitol riots, with some expected to walk free within hours. In his speech, Trump promised to be a peacemaker and a unifier, declaring the golden age of America begins right now. In other news, a 36-year-old man and a 6-year-old girl have been found dead inside a house in Scotland. Police said officers made the discovery following a report of concern for a person in Harbin Drive, West Calder, at about 4 p.m. yesterday. The force said the deaths are being treated as unexplained and post-mortem examinations will take place in due course. Now, at least 66 people have been killed in a fire that engulfed a popular Turkish ski resort hotel, forcing some people to jump out of windows. At least 51 others have been injured in the blaze, which erupted in the early hours at the Grand Kartal Hotel. Emergency teams worked non-stop with more than 260 personnel on site, and it took 12 hours for the fire to be put out. The country's Justice Minister said 4 people have now been arrested, including the owner. And Prince Harry's legal battle with the publisher of The Sun has been delayed for a second time at the High Court. The Duke of Sussex and Labour's Lord Tom Watson are suing News Group newspapers over allegations of unlawful information gathering, which the publisher denies. The publisher denies wrongdoing, but the High Court case follows 39 settlements over the past 18 years. The trial, initially set to begin this morning, has been postponed after both sides requested more time. It's expected to last 6 to 8 weeks. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Sophia. My name is Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock here on Dewbs Co. Alongside me tonight, my panel, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Tory peer and former member of the European Parliament, and James Schneider, the former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn. Good evening to both of you. You're very welcome tonight, as are each and every single one of you at home. Was you with us yesterday in that inauguration? What a day, ladies and gents. Did you get much sleep last night? I've got to say, I didn't. I kept trying to go to sleep and then I kept thinking back through the day and all of the different announcements and trying to watch the ceremony. I'm absolutely shattered tonight. What about you lot? There's so much we need to discuss. The show does indeed go on and you can join the conversation all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay, or of course you can tweet or you can X me, whatever we call it these days. Wherever you're watching or listening, you're very, very welcome to the show tonight. Now, we need to start on very important matters that, of course, started to unfold yesterday and was somewhat overshadowed by the inauguration and so on and so forth. I speak, of course, about that horrendous situation over in Southport. Well, at 8:30 this morning, the Prime Minister addressed the nation. Let's listen to some of what he had to say.
Are not just my choices, though it is a choice I would make, it is also the law of the land. That is why I couldn't disclose the details. It's why others couldn't disclose the details. It's why all of you as journalists couldn't disclose the details, because the same laws applied to you just as they applied to me. And it's really important that we make that clear. But the purpose of the rule is to protect the justice that the families and the victims are entitled to.
Let me cross live to our GB News Home and Security Editor, Mark White. It's been quite a day for announcements. You've had Keir Starmer, you've had Yvette Cooper. For anyone that hasn't been following the goings-on, bring us up to speed, Mark, if you will.
Well, what we got effectively today was confirmation that the Prime Minister and Yvette Cooper, the authorities, knew a lot more about Axel Rudikabana than the public were told at the time. Now, understandably, the public won't be told and shouldn't be told everything about a case, but there was a perception amongst many people that in the wider community that they weren't being told some key facts in this case. Now, that fueled, in particular, the internet rumours that were swirling around the internet, the conspiracy theories, compounded the sense of anger and accusations of a cover-up. But now, all these months later, with Axel Rudikabana having pleaded guilty to the 16 offences that he faced, the Prime Minister has said, yes, there were key factors that he was aware of right from the outset, but he had good reason. The Home Secretary had good reason. Other members of the police, the Crown Prosecution Service, had good reason not to tell the public, and that was because, as you heard from the clip there, it is the law of the land, the Contempt of Court Act 1981. However, others that cover these criminal cases day in, day out in the courts, as I've done for many years, think that actually what's been happening is an ever-tightening noose from the Crown Prosecution Service in what can be said prior to a trial. There is often information, and often actually quite significant information, that comes out prior to a trial. A judge will always tell the jury at the start of a trial to only judge the case on the facts before them, to forget what they may have heard in the media or read elsewhere about a case previously. And just to actually reiterate the Contempt of Court Act 1981 and what it says that there has to be substantial risk that the course of justice will be seriously impeded or prejudiced. And I think in policing circles in particular, Merseyside Police had information that they wanted to get out into the public domain because there was an information vacuum that was just being filled by this speculation and this rumour on the internet. They were effectively gagged, prevented from doing that by the CPS because of concerns the CPS said it had about this unfairly affecting any future trial. So Merseyside Police can do that, but it's not just Merseyside Police. I've heard this from countless police forces in recent years of the way in which the Crown Prosecution Service is increasingly placing itself between the police and between journalists. Police give briefings, background briefings, on the understanding that information will come out at the end of a case, sometimes before that case even begins. But it seems the Crown Prosecution Service is increasingly instructing the police to be much more restrained in what it issues to the press. The press have actually complained now to the Crown Prosecution Service and accused the CPS of overreach.
And just help viewers understand, if you will, Mark, this whole notion about potentially redefining the definition of terrorism in this country, because many people will point out, well, hang on, because if it was apparently so prejudicial to a court case, if you said that it was terrorism, how come it wasn't the same weight, if you would like, towards a case when you come out and say almost instantly that it wasn't? So there's a lot of confusion about this, and then they're saying that they might readdress the definition. Just talk viewers through the current definition of what terrorism is.
Well, the definition of terrorism is effectively the use of unlawful force, particularly against civilians in pursuit of political aims. Now, the difficulty with Axel Rudakabana is that the authorities, after all this time, have not been able to ascertain and find real evidence that suggested that he was affiliated to any particular political organisation or terrorist group. That's not to say that the acts that he was carrying out, mass murder, designed to terrorise, couldn't be effectively described as terrorism in that sense. And I think that's why the government now wants to look again at the definition of terrorism to not just include those, say, with a jihadist agenda, those on the extreme far right, but those others that just want to carry out really horrific acts, kill as many or injure as many people as possible in the pursuit of whatever twisted motivation they might have that doesn't necessarily fall into a certain agenda of either jihadists or far right, so that they will also be included within that definition, because there is some real concern now that particularly young people and young men in particular are consuming lots of violent content online. They are being influenced by this. They have perhaps had violent, pasts and outlook themselves, and then they're carrying out acts of violence for whatever reason, but not necessarily aligning themselves to a particular group.
And let me ask you this before I go, because obviously I talk to GB News viewers day in, day out. And one of the things that's really infuriated people is that throughout the unfolding of this information, an image was frequently used by the media of this Axel Rudakabana as a child who described as some Welsh choir boy, and the imagery going along with the commentary as this child image. Many people are asking, why was that police mugshot not made available before? What's your answer to those questions?
Well, it's very simple. You never get a police mugshot issued before conviction. It always comes out after conviction. One of the reasons for that is some of these images could be seen as prejudicial. Just take a look at the image of Axel Rudakabana, for instance, and a jury seeing that perhaps before deliberating on a verdict might take a different view. The images that have been out there of Axel Rudicabana have not come from the government, have not come from the police or any other official source. They are really the result of journalistic endeavour, journalists like myself being up in Merseyside or wherever, speaking to people that might know this individual, that might have some old photographs, and inevitably a lot of the photographs you will then find or be presented with are of that individual perhaps years before, as we see on the previous images of Axel Rudicabana that have been out there. But, you know, quite aside from the mugshot, I think it's worth just ending on the point that this whole episode, with the information that could have been given to the public earlier and was not, Keir Starmer says, for good reason, not to prejudice a trial. But I think what that has had is a very significant impact on the public's trust in the authorities and in government. And God forbid we have another horrific event like this in future. Whatever we're being told by the authorities, then there will be many people within the wider public who will be extremely suspicious of what they're being told and whether in fact they have been told all of the facts, or at least the pertinent facts that they need to be concerned about.
Yeah, you see, that is one of the key points in all of this, isn't it? Mark White, I thank you for that update and for your insight there. I shall bid you good evening. But look, let me put that question to you at home. What has all of this done to your trust when it comes to authorities? I just told you at the start, people like Nigel Farage calling him cover-up Keir. Is that harsh? Is that fair? Do you agree with that? How are you feeling about all of these events as you've seen all of the unfoldings? That imagery, that image of him looking like this sweet little innocent choir boy, it has, I know it's infuriated so many people. I'll tell you what Axel Rudicabana is. Many people call him a monster and all the rest of it. He's a coward. He's a disgusting, despicable coward. What kind of grown person, grown, strong male individual tackles little girls in their backs with knives? You are disgusting. You're not someone to be admired. You're someone to be pitied. You're a coward, and I hope you never forget that. I don't know how that guy will ever close his eyes and sleep, but I hope he will never forget just how cowardly and despicable he is. After the break, you will be brought into the conversation, as will my panel. Don't go anywhere. This conversation will continue in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lately, it's getting much better. The people getting more educated in terms of overall well-being of the skin health rather than temporary aesthetic treatments. Because most of the treatments in aesthetic, it doesn't change the texture of the skin. It just gives like volumetric result or remove the wrinkles temporarily.
So what are the most popular treatments that people are after?
According to a statistic report, first is anti-wrinkle, then dermal filler, then energy-based device. Yeah. But lately, biostimulators also became very popular. And
what do you mean by biostimulators?
Biosimulator, any substance that can change the texture of the skin, or like it will lead to postpone the aging process, or proliferate more collagen, increase the elasticity of the skin, such as polynucleotide or exosome, or different vitamins and minerals in a form of mesotherapy considered as a biostimulator.
Turkey's a particularly popular destination because the costs are so much lower. There have also been a lot of horror stories about what can happen when things go wrong, even people dying from post-surgery complications. What would you advise people?
Choose as a practitioner or surgeon very carefully and never prioritize price over quality. This is your face after all, your body after all. And mistakes can be reversible. It can be irreversible, and sometimes it's not like a booking restaurant or hotel. It's a sensitive matter that can affect their confidence and skin and body for life. So they need to choose very wisely. They need to search what kind of methodology that particular surgeon they perform the treatments. Are they using any safety tools?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight here on Dewbs Co. Baroness Jacqueline Foster and James Schneider remain alongside me. I've got to tell you, there is a lot of people out there that do feel that your trust in the establishment, so to speak, has been completely rocked. I would say, looking at what some of you are saying, that it's actually set in that has quite some time ago, and all of this has just accelerated it. Many of you are saying that actually you feel that he's been hiding behind the contempt of court. That's what Joyce is saying. Many of you asking, Jacob, you say, how come we tread so carefully when it comes to talking about labelling people like this? But on the flip side of it, you're saying when people take to the street in protest, they're almost instantaneously described as far right, and so on and so forth before their day in court. He says, how come no one worries about prejudicing those trials? I can speak. I've just got a massive ulcer on my tongue, so it really hurts when I'm trying to say that today. Jacqueline, can I get your reaction to this whole Southport thing?
Well, I think in terms of the communication, my own personal reaction was, I think, when I heard about it, was one of horror, like everybody. But the modus operandi, when they said there was a young man who'd gone into the house and obviously stabbed to death a number of these children and injured others, my immediate reaction, because I've dealt with terrorism throughout my entire life and also dealt with it as a member of the European Parliament, that this was some sort of terrorist act. And that was before anybody said anything. It was just a gut instinct. I think where the authorities went wrong here is I take the argument that you have not to prejudice what may come after. But on the other hand, the sort of deliberate silence for 2 months before we actually found out any more about this, I found was absolutely astonishing when they then came out and they went, oh, by the way, you know, this young man was reading an Al-Qaeda handbook and he was looking at how you can know chemical weapons like writing. And yet people who had surmised, the public, obviously, who are outraged and upset about this, that this could be a terrorist attack, it could be an Islamic attack or whatever, were immediately vilified by those same politicians and authorities. And I think the silence, because if we look back to 7/7, Lee Rigby, Westminster Bridge, you know, the Manchester Arena bombings, we all, as the public, knew fairly early on who the person was that was going to be charged. And they weren't backward in coming forward and saying who they were. I don't take the argument that Keir Starmer put out today, that this is a different type of terrorism. It is not. We have had lone wolves who have decided to act alone for 30 or 40 years. And then we also have others that will go behind, you know, come down with groups. The Manchester Arena bomb, it was a suicide bomber. There is very little difference. Joe Cox that was another one. That was some right-wing type of person. But then David Amos, obviously, that was another singleton. So this is not new. This has gone on way before the year 2000. So I just believe that it was handled very badly. I think people were vilified for showing genuine upset. They seemed to get them through the courts pretty quick. which is another questionable issue. And I think that they contributed. I'd agree with Merseyside Police. I think that's what he said, that there's always been this trusted arrangement between journalists and the police, and yet the police feel as though they were gagged trying to get some information out. This is not acceptable. We don't elect the CPS. The CPS is there for a very good reason, but by the same token, there has to be a better way of communicating, which we have had in the past. And I believe if that had been done, I do not believe the riots that followed would have actually ended up as riots.
James?
So I think the first thing is that clearly things went very wrong in this obviously violent young man, as he was at the time, threatening former school pupils, coming in with a hockey stick, etc. Something clearly went very wrong, that he was allowed to buy a knife, that there are probably things that could have been done that would have stopped the attack from happening in the first place. And I think that's probably the most important thing, and I think it's probably good that there's an inquiry to look at those
things. You know, honestly, I've just got to stop you there, because it infuriates me even just seeing that picture of that kid. I don't even want to see that image again of this monster as a child. I do not like this depiction of this guy. I'm sorry, James, so it just caught my eye then out of the corner of my eyes. I don't want that up on the screen again during this conversation. It's an insult to those little girls, actually, that were murdered. This is who did it. This man, this is the guy that these little girls had to see, not that little quiet kid a minute ago. Sorry, James.
But my point is that I think he was 17 when he did that, and when he was younger than that, he was already doing violent things that put him on the radar, and should have put him more on the radar. So I think, first things first, how did this, as you describe him, violent, disgusting, sick individual, how was he able to go and do that? And I think that is the first thing that needs to be looked at, and I'm pleased at this. On the broader stuff, the contempt of court thing, I sort of have some sympathy, and it feels a bit ironic sitting here that I've been told several times, sitting at this desk on this channel, oh no, you can't talk about it because of contempt of court. So, it seems slightly both-sided to say, well, he didn't say anything because of contempt of court, but then we here weren't speaking about it for that reason. On the terrorism thing, he's not an Islamist. He downloaded Al-Qaeda stuff. He downloaded other stuff from other violent things. This kid seems to have been absolutely obsessed, sickeningly obsessed with violence. And that's why I actually think it's a bit weird that the government want to change the definition of terrorism, because the current definition of terrorism says, as Mark was saying, it's for political aims. To me, it doesn't seem like this guy had any political aims. He was just violent psycho. And then, if we want to look at the broader thing, what happened afterwards in the slight information vacuum, I don't think the failure to prevent him from doing the killings in the first place, or the fact that we have a set of laws that prevent contempt of court, or the fact that he was 17 and therefore his name couldn't be released to begin with, and that's according to our laws, that then justifies the out-of-control speculation and then the racist violence that we saw straight afterwards.
I want to continue this conversation because we're going to have a public inquiry. I want to look at some of the things that Yvette Cooper was saying. But I do want to pose something to me feels like an obvious question that I haven't really heard much conversation about today. We're all sitting here pontificating. How does this 17-year-old, naturally, he became a wrong and much earlier than age 17, by the way, because a lot of this stuff, a lot of him getting into trouble started at quite a young age. We're all sitting here pontificating. He wasn't an Islamist. Well, what was he then? What drove him? His parents came from Rwanda at a time when there were lots of horrific things happening in that country. We talk about genocide. Apparently this Axel person had an obsession with genocide and all the rest of it. Do you think there is enough attention, thoughts and consideration put into when you bring people into the United Kingdom and you pluck them from war zones and all the rest of it, where all of that horrendous, horrific stuff is the norm? Do you actually think there's much consideration place then into looking at what mindset, what effect, what conversations, what have they seen, and how will that actually affect potentially the safety of people in Britain? Do you think that is sufficiently considered? I don't. We'll explore that perhaps and lots more when it comes to the Southport situation. I also as well want to talk to you about Donald Trump after the break.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A quiet night out there with the low cloud, mist and fog becoming extensive in many places. Some rain and drizzle out of that and a frost in the north. But Storm Eowyn is starting to move across the Atlantic, and that's going to bring widespread disruption to northern and western parts of the UK by Friday. Met Office have already issued warnings on that, so I'd recommend staying up to date with the forecast. Meanwhile, relatively quiet out there. Early hours of Wednesday, we've got a lot of low cloud for England and Wales, some mist and drizzle coming through as well. Scotland and Northern Ireland, a chilly start to the day with temperatures close to freezing and a few pockets of frost where we do get lengthy clear spells, particularly eastern Scotland. Further west, a number of showers are still moving through, and so generally frost-free here. Wouldn't rule out a few patches of fog as well, first thing for Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland. But more widespread gloom is expected for England and Wales, particularly southern and central parts where we've also got persistent rain and drizzle. And that's going to slowly meander its way southeastwards through the day, with brighter skies arriving for northern and western England, parts of Wales as well. The brightest skies, though, will be across Scotland, particularly northeast Scotland. Still some showers pushing into northern and western Scotland, but also arriving into western England and Wales before the day ends. In the southeast, though, it stays gloomy and it stays on the cold side, 5 or 6 Celsius. Thursday's a chilly start to the day with a frost in places before it turns cloudy, and this band of heavy rain crosses the country. Now, this isn't Storm Eowyn. Storm Eowyn turns up on Friday, likely to bring widespread gales, gusts in some places in excess of 80 miles an hour.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems on Merseyside for the M57. The motorway is down to a single lane southbound from junction 2 to 1 as you head towards the M62 at the scene of an accident. In Lancashire on the westbound carriageway of the M65, one lane's closed from junction 3 to 2, heading away from Blackburn towards the M61 following an accident. And in Wiltshire, the A346 Salisbury Hill, that's closed at Marlborough following a serious collision. On the Kent stretch of the M25, the inside lane of 4 is blocked anti-clockwise just before junction 2 at the Darren Finch change following an accident, adding to the usual rush hour queues as you head towards the Dartford tunnels out of Kent towards Essex. And in West Sussex, Duncton High Street is closed south of Petworth for the A285 following a serious accident, as is the A35 in Hampshire at Lyndhurst after a car drove into a telegraph pole. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, good evening to you. If you're just joining the programme, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs Co. Till 7. Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Tory peer and former member of the European Parliament, alongside me, as is James Schneider, the former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn. Look, we're talking about the situation in Southport and how, of course, that has developed now that Axel Rudikobana pled guilty yesterday. Well, we've heard about Keir Starmer. He's addressed the nation today. Also, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, she speaking to us today. Take a listen.
The Met Commissioner has warned about young men who are fixated on violence grazing across extremist and terrorist content online. And Five Eyes counter-terror partners have warned about growing radicalisation of minors, happening as so many of our children and teenagers are being exposed to ever more disturbing materials online, an online ecosystem that is radicalising our children while safety measures are whittled away.
What's your reaction and thoughts to that, Jacqueline?
I think it's escalated in terms of the amount of stuff that's available online. But I still go back to, I do not believe that this has worsened just in the last couple of years in terms of these lone wolves as such. And we've heard it all. I mean, we've heard all of this before, and I think the line came up in the end, and it was always lessons to be learned. I mean, we can take this back to Lockerbie. We can take the rise of extremism back 30 years. I mean, we had, 40 years of the IRA, frankly, that were bombing us off the mainland. So it's not like we're not used to being attacked in this country. But the trouble is, I think this is where the whole woke agenda came in terms of people being... I'm talking about the escalation of this, because people were being fearful about mentioning different races or different religions. That has got to stop, because we have to face facts as they are. And I will still go back to the fact, I do think that this young man knew what he was doing. What he actually did and who he did it to, young girls, fits in very well with this modus operandi of these Islamic terrorists. And I think that's the mantle that he has taken. Now, obviously, we'll hear an awful lot more when the judge comes forward with a whole lot more of information. But I don't think that we should be tippy-toeing around all of this. And I think a public inquiry is the right way to go. And as a side issue, when we've looked at, which isn't for tonight, but when we looked at these grooming gangs and what's gone on over 30 years with that, where children have also died as a consequence of being attacked, then, in my view, this is another reason why we need a public inquiry that should also be wide-ranging into the attacks on young people in this country.
Yeah, let me play you a clip about Yvette Cooper, actually, because she was talking tough about this public inquiry. Take a listen.
There were so many signs of how dangerous he had become, yet the action against him was far too weak. So families need the truth about why the system failed to tackle his violence for so many years. That is why we are setting up an independent public inquiry.
Honestly, right, this will get me into trouble saying this, but the more I listen to stuff, the more I listen, oh yeah, public inquiry, with Prevent has failed and this guy was a wrong 'un and so many missed chances. I'm so fed up with it, I'm reaching the point where I almost look at this and I think, surely, just give this guy, this is going to come out of my mouth and I can hear the abuse that's going to come my way, the death penalty. This will be on the tongues of so many people now. You've got people like this that seem to think that they can jump in a taxi and target little girls, admit to having done that, and then be paid by you, I, and all my viewers, the taxpayers, to languish in prison. I mean, why?
So, quickly on that, I want to come back to something that Jacqueline said. I don't support the death penalty because sometimes it goes wrong. Obviously, it's not going to have gone wrong in this case, but
so
it's
let's
better
talk about this case for him. Would you not support it for him?
Oh, no, because I wouldn't support it for anyone. And how do you start doing it? I think it's easier to say that he should stay in prison for the rest of his life, and he shouldn't be. I mean, he might even prefer to be killed by the death penalty. We don't know. But can I just come back to something that Jacqueline said about this is obviously an Islamist thing. To me, it seems more like a school shooting, a US-style school shooting type attack, and he was also looking at lots of material, apparently, according to the trial, of school shooting attacks. So I think he shouldn't be categorised as having been an Islamist because he doesn't appear to have been one.
Young girls, machetes. I mean, this is a real MO when you have looked at the knife attacks. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is. It's not me making it up.
I'm not saying you're making it up, and I'm not saying, obviously, he has learnt from lots of different types of violence, including Islamist violence. Very clearly, he downloaded the stuff.
It was a huge influence because that's the method that he used.
I'm not saying it isn't, but he was not an Islamist, and he wasn't. This is why I think that changing the definition of terrorism is...
Well, you don't know if he was or not. I mean,
there's
James, you don't know.
Fine, there's no evidence evidence that has been brought forward that he...
We don't know that.
I mean, that he's anything other than...
Anyway, I mean, it's we don't know that. We'll get more information, I think, from the judge.
But there's never been presented with any information that he's Muslim.
Anyway, we're not here to defend. I mean, I'm not here to defend him. I mean,
my point is...
We need to move on to the accountability. I think what Michelle has said. I mean, this guy wasn't under the radar. Like others who...
I know, that's how I started
it. He wasn't under that. And he'd obviously been excluded from school for quite a few years. Mm-hmm. And then his father had to stop him going on a 15-mile journey, with a knife to go back to school and all of this. So in all of these things, we all look back and go, lessons to it, but there's never accountability. Who is actually... There are people here who are responsible for also allowing this to happen. Obviously, he's got his own family, and he, the perpetrator, is always the one to blame. That's quite right. But there are others... here, and we know the security services are trying to keep their eye on thousands and thousands of people in this country, and it must be a very difficult job. But this really isn't good enough. I mean, it just is not good enough. This was avoidable, and so many of these things are avoidable.
One of the things that stuck out to me, I heard Keir Starmer repeatedly saying today, oh, this needs to be a line in the sand for Britain. It was a line in the sand for Britain quite some time ago. The moment it happened, it was a line in the sand for Britain. You might have noticed everyone then very quickly got called far right if they dared to express themselves on the streets. And no, I'm not condoning people rioting. I'm talking about the people that actually just took to the streets to protest. He goes on to say, when he's talking about his line in the sand for Britain, that we need to have a change, re how Britain protects citizens and children. But you see, all of this comes about on a backdrop where you can be sent to prison in this country for sending a tweet criticising the government's approach to something on one hand, but yet on the other hand, you can sit and look at child abuse imagery. You can be convicted of having created and distributed this stuff. And guess what happens to you? Pretty much nothing. You'll be sat at home watching whatever it is that you're watching on television. You won't be behind bars. And if you're serious about actually trying to protect children in this country, which I really do think we should be, you should be starting right at the very, very basics of saying that children are the most vulnerable, precious things that we have in our society that cannot look after themselves in any way, shape or form, and that we start today by saying, you know what, we're going to do a root and branch reform when it comes to this whole thing. If you look at any visual harm of children, never mind if you go out and do any visual harm, thank you very much, if you even start looking at this stuff, considering looking at this stuff behind bars for you, that's what I would like to see. Then I might take some of this stuff a little bit more serious. And I'm warming up now into this thought about the death penalty for people like this. Somebody needs to convince me why on earth the best outcome for this chap, Axel Rudiker-Barner, when he's sentenced on Thursday, is goodness knows how many years behind bars at the cost of God knows how many millions to the taxpayers. Why? To what end? Just because people can say, well, we're better than them, Michelle. Brilliant. Get rid of them.
European Convention on Human Rights, I mean, this is where the death penalty was kicked into touch. And, of course, many, many years ago, Ruth Ellis, that was the last woman that was hanged. And, of course, in those days, they didn't have the forensics that they have now, so there were some people who were hanged, and of course they were innocent. I have never supported the total abolition of the death penalty personally, because I think it should be available for example, the Moors murderers. For cases like this, well, this boy was underage, this teenager, but terrorist acts. I just think that there could be exceptional circumstances, and then people wouldn't be languiding. But of course, you know, the whole mood changed, and that's the decision, and this is what the UK now do.
Well, look, you know, I'm talking about cases where there is no reasonable doubt, there's no doubt whatsoever that this person has committed this crime. You've got very advanced DNA in society now. You've often got CCTV of people doing stuff. I remember the Lee Rigby killers. Why? What were they sitting behind bars for? To achieve what? Get rid of them. That's what I would like to see in this society. The problem is people will be ranting and raving, getting in touch, emailing me now saying, what an extremist that makes me. This world is upside down sometimes, isn't it? Anyway, look, I apologise for my rants. There's something about these topics when it involves children like this. It really infuriates me, saddens me, sickens me, as I know it does many of you. Let's talk about something different, a little bit more upbeat, shall we, after the break. Donald Trump. I know that many of you feel elated by the goings-on yesterday. Many of you, though, still will be thinking, I wish it was all a bad dream. Maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and he's not the president. Bad luck. See you in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Some winter sunshine likely for the next couple of days in Sardinia and also Sicily, but some showers in Cyprus and some pretty wet conditions across the Canaries and Madeira for the next couple of days. The same weather system bringing soggy skies to Portugal also, and some wet weather across southern parts of France, some snow over the Alps. Showers in Cyprus, they'll still be there on Thursday, but they should be easing by Friday, and the rain in the Canaries will be easing by Friday as well, and temperatures over 20 degrees here.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
We've got the Daily Mail now with the latest in the court case over whether a man is a woman or a man. It's a tough question, and J.K. Rowling has given her opinion. I think I can guess what it is, Cressida.
Explosive twist in Australia's What is a Woman trans battle as Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling gets involved. So this is the court case Giggle versus Tickle. Tickle was a...
He's Mr. Men.
That's right. It's a Mr. Men trans battle.
Kind of is a Mr. Man.
It was a women's group, wasn't it? Tickle, Giggles... Oh, I get it wrong. Giggles for Girls. And Roxy Tickle, who is a trans woman, wanted to join this group and wasn't allowed, was banned for being a biological male, and then sued and amazingly got $10,000 for this, which is already extraordinary to me.
Yeah.
But it's now doubling down and is going to file a cross appeal seeking to upgrade the judgment.
Yeah.
So Roxy has come back for another bite of the cherry.
And I've had a look at this Roxanne Tickle, the trans woman.
Is she pretty?
No, not one of the pretty ones. Not a Blair White. Just looks like, to be honest, it looks like
you could be sued for $10,000.
Looks like one of us.
Yeah.
To be honest, no. Like I mean, I'll happily.
For yourself.
No, I think it's an absolute. It's a farce, and it's making a mockery of not just. It's not just making a mockery of women's right to have their own spaces. It's making a mockery of genuine trans people who actually put some effort in and look like a woman.
What do you mean a genuine trans
And also,
people?
if
We don't believe in that.
No, if your name was Roxanne, if you were going to transition, you wouldn't pick the name Roxanne Tickle.
What?
You choose Tess.
You Tess. That's a kind of name. No, the truth is the problem. That's one of the problems. Is you get a choice of the name you're going to choose. And of course, you're going to choose like a hot Roxanne. That's a hot Roxanne. That's a great name. They're not going to choose.
You don't think
Louis.
Tess would work better with Tickle?
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry, Jacqueline Foster and James Schneider with you until 7 o'clock. The time flies. Sorry, everybody, I've taken up a lot of the show ranting about that Southport situation. Glynis says, how can so many people, if this has all been going on for so many years in terms of awful, horrendous behaviour, where are parents in some of these equations? How come they don't know or flag some of this stuff? I've got to say, Glynis, we don't really have a lot of information about that side of things yet. I'm sure all of that will come out over time. But look, I want to reflect on yesterday, Donald Trump's inauguration. I mean, he's not messing around. He means business, Jacqueline, and he's a man of his word. He's signed executive orders on so many now of the things that he promised he would do in that election process. What's your reaction?
Well, I was absolutely delighted that he was elected. I have supported his re-election for a long time and said so publicly. What we have lacked in Europe and here and other parts of the world is a real, I would say, weak leadership in the White House. It is vitally important in the West that we have very strong leadership. And the proof was in the pudding in the 4 years that he did serve. And then, obviously, we've seen the disintegration in security across the globe, and particularly the Middle East and obviously Ukraine, over the last 4 years. So I think it's a real win-win. I think what you could see, the amount of work I think the team have put in before the actual inauguration yesterday, they have gone through everything with a fine-tooth comb. So when you looked at the executive orders that he was signing, whether it had things to do with energy, you know, drill, baby, drill. I'm fully supportive of that. Obviously, getting people back to work, back in the office, you know, from a domestic point of view. The way he also had the relatives of hostages that are still held in Gaza. And so I just thought it was a fantastic day. I thought it was so uplifting to actually watch. And you know, I think it's just going to be, you know, somebody said today, you should describe him as he's like an explosive on legs. Like a grenade on legs.
Blimey. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not.
As a compliment,
James?
compliment, yeah.
I mean, obviously, it was a big spectacle, and he's an extremely good showman, and I think signing executive orders to cheers in a stadium full of your supporters is, in comms terms, a pretty smart move. But I find the way that we talk about the US politics really weird and symptomatic of us not really being a fully independent state and having kind of the mindset of the 51st state. Like, you know, my view is Harris would have been bad for Britain and the world in a whole series of ways. Trump is going to be bad for Britain and the world in a whole series of ways. And I find it odd that we kind of are made to pick teams for in another country's politics.
So which making you pick teams?
No, but I mean the way in which it's spoken about generally in Britain. When in the US they have an extremely corrupt political system where money talks and people's views don't really matter, and it's owned primarily by billionaires, as you saw in the second row behind the Trump family in the inauguration. There they all were, our tech overlords, these plutocrats that do not have the US American people's interests in mind, let alone ours in heart. So I think we should be a bit more level-headed in our approach to looking at the US. The US is the most powerful country on earth. It is the most warlike country on earth. What it does has big effects on us, and I don't think what it does necessarily we should follow.
Well, I don't think we're talking about following, are we? I mean, I wish we were able to have groups together with tons of billionaires, because if you've got billionaires generally employing something, normally you've got a good economy. So, you know, we have a capitalist society. That's the way we run it. And I don't think there's any point being negative about what other people choose.
Well, quite frankly, I hope that we do follow some of the stuff that he is implementing. All this stuff about from today, there's only two genders recognised, male and female, and a woman is an adult human female. I mean, that is music to my ears. I hope all of that common sense does filter through to the UK, because what we got in this country, we've got leaders, two fellas, that seem to think that women can indeed have penises. I mean, give me some strength,
I think
please.
some of these executive orders might go the way of... Do you remember Barack Obama's first executive order?
Yes, but
to close Guantanamo Bay, which that prison camp continues to be open to this day.
So you're not holding out faith. Look, I'm going to rudely interrupt, because before you both go, I do just want to ask you, if I can, about Elon Musk. He's come under fire. I'll play this whilst we're talking. I'll describe it in case you've not seen it. He's at the ceremony yesterday. He comes onto the stage. He's beside himself with excitement, I would say. Yeah. In he comes. He's elated. It's jubilation. It's all the rest of it. I mean, we have got to be honest. This is someone, of course. He is on the autistic spectrum. He is a bit weird. Some of the things that he does, it's a bit odd. But he's now been criticised for doing what some people are now calling a Nazi salute. You'll see it in a few minutes. And he's really getting a battering for this, James. Where are you on this? I think it's pathetic, but where are you?
I don't think he'll be upset about it at all. And I think that it's possible that it was done in such a way with plausible deniability. So that some people see it and they think, yes, that's a Nazi salute, and attack him for it. And the Trump campaign, and Elon Musk was a key part of the Trump campaign, are very happy to be attacked on the basis of being fascist or a threat to democracy, because it didn't work as an attack line. In terms of spectacle and controlling the story of the day, which Trump did extremely well, he has his in his terms positive story of the day, which is his executive orders, and the negative one is the way in which he's
You've got
attacked.
20 seconds.
It's nonsense. This was like John Travolta dancing. That's the emoji I actually put on Twitter. You know, what's behind this? This is a little dirty trick now. It's just to now muddy the waters. There's loads of ways you can take photographs of people when they're dad dancing on stages or parties. So I don't accept any of that at all. I wish them the best of luck in America, in which we had half the optimism here.
Oh, so do I. Wouldn't that be good, to be optimistic about society? I could tell you, lots of you are indeed optimistic about the Trump administration. Lots of you as well also agreeing with me about maybe it's time to start considering death penalties for the likes of Axel Ruder Cabana. Maybe that might be one step too far for now. But anyway, gents, thank you both for your time. Thank you at home. Have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow night.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A quiet night out there with the low cloud, mist and fog becoming extensive in many places. Some rain and drizzle out of that and a frost in the north. But Storm Eowyn is starting to move across the Atlantic, and that's going to bring widespread disruption to northern and western parts of the UK by Friday. Met Office have already issued warnings on that, so I'd recommend staying up to date with the forecast. Meanwhile, relatively quiet out there. Early hours of Wednesday, we've got a lot of low cloud for England and Wales, some mist and drizzle coming through as well. Scotland and Northern Ireland, a chilly start to the day with temperatures close to freezing and a few pockets of frost where we do get lengthy clear spells, particularly eastern Scotland. Further west, a number of showers are still moving through.